That red light's on. Does it mean it's on?
Yep, it's on. Okay.
Okay. This is Fresh Market Aqua Farm. And hopefully you're going to be the people who will be running it. And so I'd just like to show you a few things and get them on tape so that you can understand them. The first thing I do when I come in the morning is to turn the lights on. These lights are a special kind of a light, and they take about 5 minutes to go on. So if you turn them on and it seems like they're not going on, give it some time and they'll come up nice and bright. That saves a lot of electricity, by the way. First thing I do when I come in is I come to my water supply. This water supply enters here, goes through carbon filtration, and ends up in tank number 3, the smaller tank, which you'll see later. The reason I open it right there, I don't know if you can see that, Carlos. See this lever right here? That lever opens it. This lever should be open so that it can go through here and into the tank. The reason that I put water in that tank is because that's a heated tank. And that way the water which is coming out of here probably at 50 degrees goes into a heated tank before it goes back into these tanks. The things here, you may want to take a look at this, Carlos. I don't know if you can see right here. This is a filter, and the cartridges are right here. This filters the water coming in before it goes into our carbon filters. This I was required to put in by the city is a backflow, so that nothing that goes this way will come this way. I have another one there that wasn't good enough for him. This is a $300 piece of equipment, so take care of it. Next, what I do...
So what do you got to do over here? You just open up, or just
open this up. See this lever right here?
Yeah, just open that up.
Open that up, and that allows the water to come in.
Yeah, okay. So that's the only thing you have to open up there.
Right, and this is city water.
Yeah.
Then I'm looking at tank number 1. This is 1, 2, and 3. I open this electric box, and I shut it down. And here, this is a changer. This will we go from 12 o'clock, where it says filter, down to 6 o'clock, where it says backwash. What this is going to do is reverse the filter and flush out everything down the sewer. Now I turn it on, and I let it go for about 30 seconds. Turn it off again and put it onto filter, and that'll keep the water flowing through here back into these barrels. These barrels have pieces of plastic in them, and those pieces of plastic are where the bacteria grow. The bacteria will consume the nitrogen or the nitrates that are produced by the fish after the fish eat. Then I'm going to get my cup. When I feed the fish, again, this is feed that I buy at the Amherst Farmer Supply. If you bought it by the ton, you could save money, but I don't need it for so many times. What I do is I don't give too much feed. I give 1 cup at a time, and then I watch and see if they've eaten it all. And what I do is I sprinkle it all the way around the tank so that there's not that much competition. Otherwise, they fight like crazy and hurt each other. So all I do is just sprinkle around the tank. And then go like that. And there's still some fish left in this tank. We'll see how they go for it too. I'm going to start on this tank now. You may want to take it. Oh, you can't get over here, can you? That's okay. There's a smaller fish in here right now. And I, again, distribute the feed so that they don't hurt each other when they're going for it. This tank can take up to, about five cups. And each cup, when it's up to the brim, is about 10 ounces. So I go 5 or 6 cups when it had a lot of fish in it. And it's probably not enough, but you really need an RBC, the filters, to add more filtration to this if you want to go much more than that. That's enough, and this can handle that much. And that tank, the reason I'm only doing, I do 4 cups in that tank is because the filtration is not as good. I've done 5, and you could do 5, but I find this to be the safest to do it that way. Next what I do is I've got a pH tester. pH tester has these buttons. All you need is the first button at the bottom. The reason I have this line on it is that this can't be submerged above that line. I'm going to dip it in there, and I'll show you. If it goes above here, the water starts to get into the mechanism, and it'll destroy it. So it's got temperature and the pH tester, and it all works out. So I turn it on. I don't know if you can see. It says pH, and then it gives me a number. It's 7.2 right now. It's just naturally. And this is probably what this is going to be. This is what it was yesterday, 7.1. What you want to do is you want to keep it at 7. It doesn't have to be exact, but the closer to 7, the better. 7 is neutral. And out of 7, everything functions really well. So all I do is I hold it in up to that line, and it takes sometimes about a minute or two. Right now, it's at about 7. So that means I don't need to add anything. But if it were below 7, what I do is I add sodium bicarbonate, and I do it by the half cupful or so. These are cups here. The lines on this cup is 2.5. And you don't necessarily need to put a whole cup until you learn how it's going to do it. Going a half cup at a time helps quite a bit. So I would just take this and sprinkle it in there as the water moves around. And then when you come back in the afternoon, you can test it again and see how it is the next morning.
So that's if it's below 7.
That's if it's below 7.
Okay.
Now if it's above 7, and it's up around 7.5, 7.6. What I do is I add half a cup or a cup of this. This is muriatic acid. It's the same thing that they put in swimming pools when people swim in them. It's safe in the water, but it's very dangerous handling it. So you've got to be very careful. You don't want to splash this on yourself. And I have plenty of genes at home to prove that it bleaches. I've got spots all over these genes. So I keep that here. I keep this wrapped well with a piece of metal on it so that when the fish splash, they're not going to get it. I try to record everything too. You should record what the pH is every day so that you know the next day or 2 days down how your water is working. I also record how much feed I give the fish. Therefore I can compare the pH and the feed, because the more feed you give, usually the lower the pH is going to be. And again, you don't want too low a pH because then the bacteria won't work. And you don't want too high a pH because then that affects the fish and harms the fish's gills. So you've got this delicate balance in there you've got to keep. Now I do all the tanks. So this, I always do this tank separate to keep the record. And again, you just put it in up to where the arrows are. This is pretty good. This is 7.1. 7.1 is okay. 7.2 is okay. If it goes above 7.2, if it goes below 6.8, then you're going to have to add either the basic, if it's low, to bring it up, and the acid, if it's high, to bring it down. Let's see. You want to shut that off for a second? This is a water meter. We really don't need it, but they asked me to put it on, and they said someday they would record or whatever, and they never have. But this is very important. In the early days, I flooded this place. You put your hose in, you expect it to be filling, and then you get off and you're off working on something else, and sure than heck, it just comes right over. It just gets too much. And this one I've done, it's plastic, but it works really well. I don't leave it on overnight because I think it's plastic. I'd rather make sure it's shut off. And it goes like the clock. It follows the clock, and you set it. Usually I do 200 gallons a day, and that's usually more than enough. Now I'm going to turn it off again. This hose, and I'll replace it with the gray one later, this hose goes into the tank over here. This is the purge tank. And what a purge tank is, you put fish in here to clean out their stomachs. And I put them in the purge tank 4 or 5 days, and the fish will taste very different, very much better. They're much sweeter when they're kept in this tank. And so the process on this tank is the warming tank. That's got my heater there. These are homemade heaters. They work very well. You just have to keep an eye on the temperature. I have a toilet thermometer here, and it shows it at 75. That's fairly good, considering I just put 100 gallons of water in. The purge tank warms the water, and we take that water, and we'll put it back into these other tanks after we backflush it. So this tank, I took some water out before by the filter. And in here is just a switch. And that switch is connected to both the heater and the pump. There's a pump in the bottom of this. And what I do is I turn it on there, and there's where the water comes out. And what I do is I refill back up to that level. Now I'm keeping it high, but it can be a problem when there's a lot of fish in here if you keep it too high, because the fish are always jumping out of the water, and if it's too high, it's too close to the edge, and they'll jump out. What I do is I transfer fish from this tank to this tank to clean them out. And then they get kind of upset in here, and sometimes you might lose 2 or 3 fish in the first day or two. And that's because they're leaping out of here. And sometimes they can leap about this high out of that water. They just come out, and then they just go flat right on the cement. Now last night one fell out, and we came over, it looked like it was dead. And so I took it, I washed it up a bit, refreshed it in the water, and put it back in, and this morning it's not dead. These fish are tough, but it does damage them a bit to be able to control that height. But these fish never really hit many things except the side of the tank, which is rounded. That's another reason why it's good to have a round tank, because they don't bang into a flat surface. They just bounce off of here. See, this is filling up, and if you notice inside, there's like a whirlpool going on. That's what these white white containers are, and this piece of styrofoam. They're there for that, to break up the whirlpool that's created. If you don't have these pieces in, by sending this water around, it becomes like a dish. And the dish will move up and down. In the early days, I had to keep my water much lower because it would come up and it would just splash right off the side. And then I came up with this idea, and it's worked very well. I started out with styrofoam, and I've gone to these empty acid containers, and they seem to work really well. Now there's enough water in there, I'll just shut it off. That's something to be really aware of, because if you get involved and you move, like I do, I forget, I get into something else, this could overflow, and that could create a situation where there's not enough water in this one. Okay. This one is more complicated than the other one. You have to turn 5 of these. And the ones you turn are the ones that have pieces of tape on them. First you turn it off. Then you open the exit with the tape. When you're back flushing, you always push the tape one. So this one has the tape on that side, I push it. This one has the tape on that side, I push it. This side I push it. And then this one is a very difficult one down here. For me, especially for my thumbs are bad. It doesn't open, or it doesn't close entirely. And if you try too hard, you'll break it. That's been a real problem. I've had to replace some of them. There's some parts here at the table. Okay, so what I've done is I've opened the exit, I've closed the recirculating into there with these two. See, they're closed. When they're in this position, it's closed. When they're in this position, it's open. So now what's going to happen is the water is going to come into here and into the bottom, and then it filters up through and gets rid of the waste. All right, so this, what I do is now turn it on, and if you see the little squares on my capture net, they're an inch. And what I do is I try to replace an inch of water a day. And that way the filter's being cleared out, and I'm putting water in here from the purge tank.
Now you do that when you come in.
Yeah.
And so that would be that switch up there behind you, that's off.
That's off.
And then when you come in the morning, you put it on.
No.
Oh.
When I came in, it was on, but it was flowing down this way and back into the tank. I turn it off, and then I turn these 5 valves. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the exit now, 5. The ones with tape on them. Then I turn it back on again. When I'm down an inch, then I can turn it off. I reverse myself, so instead of pushing on the side that has the tape, I push on the opposite side for all those 5. Don't touch that valve or those 2 valves. I'm just watching and seeing how much is out.
So you're adding water in there now.
Yeah. No, I'm taking water out of there, bubbling it up through the filter, and then out to the sewer. And now I'm stopping it because I've given an inch. An inch is on one of those little squares on there is an inch. And that's all you need to change. Then I close this one, pushing on the opposite side of the tape. I close this one, pushing on the opposite side of the tape. I close this one on the opposite side. This one on the opposite side, and this one on the opposite side. So it takes 5 valves. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the one down here, 5. Now when I turn it back on, it'll come out through this trickle filter. Now what the trickle filter does is it not only creates an environment for bacteria to work on and help you clean the water, it also aerates the water, putting air into it, and it allows carbon dioxide to go off into the air by splashing the water like that. Each of these tanks has about the same amount of plastic material. The same amount in these two and in this one. What I've done, this is sort of like an experiment, so I have more in this one than I have in each of these. These have worked perfectly. This one gives you some trouble. This one has to be clean. So what you need to do is every now and then, when you see that the water backs up on it, and it's not much coming out the bottom, you've got to turn it off, let all the water flow out, and take the cover off. And you can, if you have help, it's really great because somebody can untie that, and then you can bring it over onto there. Because what I do is I get on the other side, I stand on a barrel, I get up on top of there, and I pull that over to that platform. Then you've got to take out, I've got bags around the plastic net bags. And you just got to be careful you don't tear it on the holes that are inside. If you tear holes in them, then all of the pieces of plastic come out. And you take them out and you can just rinse them right in here and then put them back in again. And it's good. You can reverse them too. I don't know why, but when it fills up and I clean it, then I reverse it. And I just keep doing that every time I clean it. You don't normally have to clean it too often unless the water's very dirty and unless you're using a lot of feed. What you see here are airlifts. And what an airlift is I've got a pipe here. It's like a 6-inch pipe. And I have it tied to the side. And inside of it, I have an air stone. This air stone is connected to a rotary vane compressor that's over on the other side of that wall over there, under the styrofoam. I'll show it to you later. And you just want to clean this off every now and then. But you see what it does is it puts out a lot of air, and it puts it out in the right size bubbles. If bubbles are too big, fish can't use them. But this not only puts out air, by putting it down this pipe, the first thing it does is it sucks water in. And by that air going up, it sucks water in, and that's how I get my circulation in the tank, by the water being pumped up. And what it does also is it pumps the water from the bottom to the top. So it keeps it turning around and changing at the same time. Otherwise stuff would build up on the bottom. Don't worry about any of this stuff. It's all been experimented with. Down behind each of these tanks, and you can't see it in that thing, unless probably maybe you take a picture of it.
There it was there.
Can you see the pumps? This is the pump. This is the main part of the system. The water comes out of the tank. It comes through that where that valve is. I don't know if you can see the orange right there. Mm-hmm. And it goes into that container, which is a filter. And then it comes into here. So what you need to do at times is to close off that valve. When you first shut this off, close off that valve, and then open that filter, and I'm going to show you. If you maybe turn it off for a second, I'm going to go over. All right, this is the valve. Now I have it shut off. The electricity is shut off over there in the box. And what I do is, there's a piece of tape here, so I know that that's the way I want to go. I push on the tape part, and I close this. That closes the water from coming in. There's a lot of pressure coming in. This is the filter right here, and I use this because sometimes it's a little hard. Just to loosen it a bit. This filter, you're going to get wet maybe. You got anything on the floor? Is the camera on the floor or anything? No. Okay. What's inside of here is a basket. And that basket will fill up with I mean, if a fish dies and we don't find it and there's bones or anything like that, this basket will fill up with it. And all the plastic that gets loose. Because these are what the plastic looks like inside of those barrels up above. I have different kinds, and I've tried different experiments, and these little tiny white things I can't get rid of. I never should have done it. Okay, there's a little slot here, so when you put this back, you find out, you feel it, and you'll feel it about 8 o'clock this way, that this goes in. But it's got to go all the way down, so that when you put this back, you just have to turn it lightly and it goes right in. And you don't have to tighten this much. It's pretty good. Okay, and then now you open the water again and let the water come back into it and fill up. And now we're going to go over and turn it back on again. Okay, now I just turn it back on, and that puts the system working again. Now, this filter doesn't work as well as the other filter. And I've tried different mediums in it. And what it needs is pea-sized gravel. And what you do is, if the water slows down a lot, you need to take this off. Well, first you turn it off, open the drains so that it drains out. Shut the valve over there, of course, so it doesn't keep refilling. That valve that we just looked at. You shut that valve, you open this one right here. This is the exit valve. You open it, pushing that aside with the tape. Then you unscrew this when it's nice and empty. You unscrew this. It's a clamp. It comes off. This wire holds this. You undo this thing right here, this connector right here. And then inside, there's a lot of stone and stuff, but you'll see that it builds up on top if you get a layer of feed and everything else from the fish. What you need to do is I have a basket, like a wire, plastic wire basket that I put inside of a pail, and I scoop off all the top material, put it in there, and rinse it, take it outside even, and wash off the gravel, put the gravel back in, retighten it here, and then it works a lot better. And you might, at certain times, if you're putting a lot of feed, you might need to do it even every week. You can see how it works for you. The other one works much better, and usually you don't have to do much to it. If it starts to slow down, you just take out the center. There's a rubber top, and it unscrews, and you take that out, and you can go inside. The water's like a water fountain in there. You can turn it and loosen up the gravel all the way around. Turn it back up and down. You want it in the up and down position, and then you put the cover back on. This one can be done every week. That one, check it out every month or something like that. That one really works better. This system looks confusing, but once you start to see how it works and where the water flows, you'll see that it's a pretty good system. Another thing I want to say is that sometimes there's a foam buildup on these tanks. In the morning when you come in, I use a very fine net, and I scoop out the foam and throw them in buckets and eventually throw it outside. Try not to be obvious when you're throwing it outside. But you can put foam in a bucket, and tomorrow come back and most of it's gone. It turns to water. But what that is, that white foam, which you don't see now because we've fed them already, is really the food that's in the water, and it combines with the water, and then it comes out through these things and it makes a foam. And that foam, by taking that foam off, what you're doing is you're helping the filters and all to work. You're taking out a certain amount of that and just taking it out in the foam. And that's a good thing. If you look in the center now, you can see how fast it's starting to go. You can see that whirlpool that I was talking about before going. And it's really moving around in that circle. And if these weren't here, that circle would move out farther and farther until the whole thing was going in that whirlpool. So don't take them out because they look like junk. So everybody says it looks like the river or something like that. No, but it's not. It's very valuable. Both tanks here have platforms that are strong enough to stand on when you're working. You can work in these. What I do with these every now and then is I just shake them because they don't have too much in. And you'll see if a dirty colored water comes out, it means that you just, at least you're cleaning them. By shaking this side, you're really shaking both of them. And that one's going to be your problem. That's the one you have to work on. Another thing I do to keep it flowing all night is this will slow down because the filter sort of fogs at a certain point. Well, I come back, I don't know if you can see here, this is the switch. When this is running, water at night sometimes will slow down going through that barrel filter. What this does is this allows some water to bypass the filter itself so that you continually at least get the carbon dioxide out of the water and the aeration going. And even the filter works itself. And the way you do that is by opening this slightly, that increases the water flow there. And eventually, when this slows down, this will continue it going because you're bypassing the filter.
So you do that every night?
Yeah, well every day. Whenever you do this, you just do this part too. So what you do is you bring it down, and you can hear it if you listen when you want to stop. If I go here, sometimes I'll hear a noise. I can't hear it right now, but I really want it about 8 o'clock, 2 o'clock. And that's all you have to do. You don't want it any more than that, really. And that's just, that'll keep that filter going constantly. And it'll work all the time, and it'll have a lot of water coming out of it. Okay.
So you need to do that, when do you need to do that?
Well, after I clean the filter, I turn on the water again. It's those 5 things.
Yeah.
And I wait till it slows down a minute or two just to see. And then I turn it. So before you can do it before you leave, or you can do it when you're doing this. If too much water is coming out of there, which means it'll be coming over the top and flowing down, you don't really want that. It's not going to help. I mean, it doesn't hurt really. That probably helps, but you don't want to splash water all over the place because you can splash it out of the tank at night, and that'll bring the whole tank down. The reason I have these boards here on the other side is so that the water doesn't splash out very much. A little of it does splash out. Okay, what I'm going to do is to refill tank number 2 with water, the water that I took out of there to back flush the filter. And again, I put the hose from this tank back to that tank, and then I turn it on. And you see how it's going in here? And what I do is I leave that on to get my inch back again. So I bring my water level back up again. This usually holds it pretty well. If you don't, yeah, that usually works well. And what's happening here is you'll see that the water level has gone down. This is a good water level if you have fish in here so that they don't jump out so easily. And I replace the water that goes into the tank 1 and tank 2 gets replaced from here, and then I put fresh water in here, so that keeps this water nice and clean. I don't feed the fish in this tank. These fish are off of feed. I've tried experiments, and I know these fish can go at least a month without eating. It sounds funny. Now they'll lose their stomach, but this is a good way to hold fish if you're going to get ready for marketing. So all your fish that you're going to market, you're going to want to purge them, unless you're buying purged fish from John or something like that. If you want to purge your fish. And you got to pay attention to what you're doing, because every now and then I forget. And you don't want to take too much water out of here because out of the purge tank because you chill it down too much. I don't mind these fish getting a little cooled down, but I try to keep the water here about 75 degrees. And that's about the water level about where it was when I started. And now I just turn it off. There's a pump at the bottom here, and this red cord allows you to pull that pump up if you need to. Sometimes when this is too full, that water will siphon back into here. And will fill this tank and empty this tank. And so what you basically do is you pull up the pump and let air into it so that it doesn't have a vacuum that'll siphon the water out.
So this one doesn't have a filtration system?
No, it would improve it if it did. And all three of these tanks need an RBC, which is a rotating biological something, compactor or something like that. And you can get those out of the AES catalog. AES is probably the best. It's aquaculture, engineering, something. AES, everybody knows AES in the business.
Well, why don't you have a filter here?
Well, because I didn't have the money to put into it.
Well, you should.
I should. What I have is that you can see I have air going in, and that air doesn't make it go around. This is a kind of a small tank to do that. But this air is for the fish, to give air to the water. And when you're ready, you can shut that off, and I'll show you where the compressor is. Rotary vane compressor. And that's the filter. And what I put over the filter is a sock. And that'll take a lot of the dust that comes and keeps it out of the actual filter. So you can save money on the filters. This doesn't pump very hard, and I've only got 2 hoses running out of here. But over there you'll find I've got enough to make 5 out of here. And this should be able to run the entire place with the style that I have it. In fact, you can use, the air operates the rotating biological filter, and this should be able to handle it. It's a pretty good one. The reason I have the styrofoam over it is that it's damn loud. And that's the only reason that I have the styrofoam. Not to hold the heat or anything. It's very noisy operation. I didn't realize how noisy it would be. If you're going to get another compressor, I would get a blower, just so you have 2 different kinds. There's a number of blowers in the AES catalog that you can get. And they'll run maybe $300 or $400. There's a lot of equipment here. I don't know if you can see this. Under here is a lot of valves and connectors and everything that you would need to expand the system. Even hoses and whatnot. Plus I've got fiberglass resin that I don't use. I wouldn't use it anymore. But I use to put the tanks together, and I'll explain that in a second. But we use this Velux, or Vulux, Vulcan, whatever it is. We use a caulking, and you can talk to the fellows at Diamond Filter. You can ask. Well, I'll talk about that after. Now, can you explain how to put tanks together?
Yeah.
This tanks come in 3 side pieces and 2 bottom pieces. And they all have to be bolted together. And these are tanks. They're made in Canada, and I probably wouldn't get them again. But I had them made specially for me so that I could have them raised off the concrete floor, and therefore I could run piping around. Now, it's pretty good because it keeps it off the ground and it leaves an airspace there for insulation, so it doesn't go too much heat into the ground. But what I do in addition is I take those big sheets of styrofoam and I cut them, and I know you can't see it now, but it takes a bit of work, but you can cut them and you can press them into place. You don't have to glue. I've tried glue, I've tried everything. You don't have to. You just press them right into place. And that puts a lot of insulation under the tank. That tank has insulation. This was the first tank we did that doesn't have insulation. It's just air under it. Then what you do is you've got to set the tank up. So you set the base up, you bolt it all, you turn it over, you bolt it all together, make holes and bolt it. I've got holes already in it. The bolts need to be stainless steel, so you get a bolt, a nut, and a washer. And you bolt that and two washers, one on either side if you want. It makes it stronger. You bolt that together. You need something that won't rust. When you lay this down, you turn it back over like this, you lay it on the ground, wherever you want to do it, and then you put the sides together. And you bolt the same way. So you drill all the holes all the way around, and then you put a bolt in every one of them. And then you use the caulking in between. There's a special kind of caulking that you can put that's really worked out. This was done with fiberglass, and I had to do the entire thing 3 times, and it's a real pain. That one was done with caulking, which the company that made these says, they told me you cannot use caulking. I said, why? They said, because caulking won't work. Well, the guys from Diamond Filter proved them wrong. So you put the caulking on, you bolt it together, and all the way around the bottom, and then there's another kind of caulking you can put on the surface to make it real smooth on the inside. You don't want any rough edges anywhere in aquaculture, because that's where the fish get hurt, on rough edges. I think that's it.
You use those tanks, those white tanks, to transport the fish when you want to bring them to a market or whatever.
Right, what you do is put a cover on here. You put your fish in and take the fish out, and put the cap back on. It's good for travel. They all have a petcock at the bottom, so you can empty the tank. And I'll have 1 or 2 outside that you can use. You cut it the way you want. This is also the type of thing, it's got to be inside the basket. It can't be like this because it'll expand. It doesn't hold enough water at all. And that's what the baskets are for. And that's what I've used in stores for live fish. So I have one outside there. The top is cut, and you can put your fish in and people can look in. And I have a lot of equipment over here which you'll find that to the right of the door there are aquarium equipment. There's filters, there's heaters, things like that. So you can set one of these up in wherever you want it in a store. You just have to treat it like an aquarium. One of the things you want to know about traveling is I use these 2 chemicals for traveling. One is to eliminate foam, and it says it on there, foam eliminator, because when you travel, sometimes the fish and the air make a lot of bubbles, and the bubbles start to come out of the tank all over the place. So it just takes a small teaspoon of this to keep that from happening. And then I like to use Amquel. And what Amquel does is it takes out the ammonia, the chloramine, and the chlorine out of water. You need that for 2 reasons. One, when you're transporting fish, it's good to have a small amount of this in there so that it uses up the ammonia created by the fish. Because when the fish breathe, when they're exhaling through their gills, what they're doing is really producing ammonia from their food and everything. This will keep that down. This is also very useful when you put a tank in a store or any place like that, because the water you're going to get there most likely is going to be city water. And when you use city water, that will kill the fish. But by putting in a little bit of this, and the directions are on the side, it eats up or it combines with the chlorine and chloramines, and it makes the water safe for fish. So you can test for your ammonia, and there's a lot of little tests. There's a little package you can get. You pour it in some water and check it out if it works, and if it has a high ammonia. I run a fairly high ammonia system because I can't keep on top of it enough. I don't have enough filtration. But my fish are accustomed to it, and those that are not accustomed to it, they will die first. But the ones that remain, and that's the overwhelming majority, most of them, 90-some%, can acclimate to that. The temperature in this place, I keep it low because I can't afford the oil. I keep it at 70. You can see the thermometer right there. It's at 70 right now. And that's about as low as you want to go. The fish like it much better at 80. But out of necessity, you'll find. If the oil prices come down, it's different. You don't want to get anywhere below 60 degrees. 60 degrees, not only don't the fish feed, but they start to get sick. And if you can keep the temperature up. Tilapia are the strongest, easiest growing fish there is, but they need the temperature. And that's very different than the other freshwater species that we're accustomed to. They're not like trout. They need the temperature. And in the summer, they love it. In here, it gets warm in the summer, and they just love it. And you have to know that, if you haven't been here before, the walls are covered with 2 inches of foam. It's a heavy foam that is very hard, and it's fireproof. So this has been approved by the city, and this keeps in a lot of the heat. And that's why we put that up here. It's a urethane foam. It's a closed cell foam. On the other side of that wall is another part of this building. We built the wall, and if we ever needed it, we could have expanded into that part of the building. But that's to keep this side warm, because the other side is not heated. And that's my oil furnace up there. And we rigged it high up, out of the way. It's worked fairly well so far. The oil goes in over here. I use South Hadley fuel, and they know, they have a key, they can come in, and you order the oil, and they will bring it. You've got to watch the oil. The gauge doesn't work. Somehow it got screwed up, and I had the guy in to try and fix it. When we fixed it, it still doesn't work. So there's a stick on the side next to the wall, and what you do is you use a measuring stick. And you don't want the oil to go down below this much oil in the tank, because if it goes down too low, there's stuff at the bottom, I think, that gets into the filter, sort of clogs the filter. So you want to keep, when it gets about 8 inches, you want to order oil, because you don't want it to go below 6. And they know me, and I order 100 gallons at a time, twice a month. And that's basically what it takes. I don't know what else to say. Good luck. Something that I talked about earlier about the filters. This one's easy to take a look at. And I just thought I'd throw this in at the end here. We have the same situation as with the other tank. You can turn off the water right there. And basically, to get inside...
So do you have to turn off the electricity too?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you do. I've already turned off the electricity, and you see there's no water flowing anymore. And what you want to do is, I have these bolts in here, and basically what I do is I use those bolts to unscrew this cap. And when I unscrew this cap, then you have access to the gravel. And what you want is gravel again. You want pea-size and bigger gravel. You don't want to put sand in here. These are called sand filters. But a sand filter, I've learned, is for a swimming pool or for a drinking water system. It's not for a fish system. Sand in here clogs up very rapidly. So I've learned to replace it over the years. And then this goes back, and all you need is, if it leaks, you just put a little caulking. You don't want to tighten it too much, because then you're not going to be able to get it off again. And again, all you need is a little bar. And I use this will be here. And I just undo it that way. And then when I tighten it, I tighten it that way. That's the one thing I just wanted to make sure, so that you know how to do it.
And how often do you have to clean it?
This one's not very often. This one as long as the water flows, and it flows all night through there fairly well, you don't have to worry about this.
So at night, you leave the water flowing.
Everything is just like it is right now.
With the electricity on, the water flowing, the lights off.
Right. And this has the same as the other tank. You see there's that water bubbling out, and that is what gives it the motion of the tank. Yeah. The other tank would flow faster, but it's got those... Oh, like that. I thought you meant turning like that way. Yeah.
thank all of you for coming out this evening at such a cold evening.
Le quiero dar las gracias a todos los que han venido en esta tarde tan fría.
But I want to take this opportunity to thank city councilors that are present here. Can you just please raise your hand, please? The city councilors that are present here.
Queremos dar la oportunidad a darle las gracias a todos los concejales que se encuentran aquí esta tarde, todos aquellos que tienen sus manos levantadas.
I also want to thank all the school committee members that are presently here.
También a todos los miembros del comité escolar que también están aquí en esta tarde.
También quiero darle, I would like to also thank Michael Kane, our state representative Michael Kane is here, our Senator Michael Canape, Congressman John Over, and our faith-based representative.
También al representante Kane, al congresista Over, al otro representante Kane, Canape, y la comunidad de la fe que se encuentra aquí también en esta tarde.
further ado, I would like to bring our mayor.
También queremos darle las gracias a todos los miembros del comité de la parada que se encuentran aquí presentes, todos aquellos que están, todo el presidente y los coordinadores de la parada.
First of all, I'd like to think it's important for us to understand how we are the same. We're all Holyokers, we all struggle with so many different things, and we're going to change the city in a way that is not going to be by edict, but it's going to be by engagement. It's going to be by engagement to each other, making sure that we get to know each other better, to share each other's worries. It is not going to be by resolution of the mayor or the city council, but it's going to be about resolve, about how we resolve our problems in a peaceful, non-violent way. With so much going on in the world today that challenges us from a peace perspective, we have to learn how to make sure we can live together and how we live in non-violence. How we can talk to our young people through our schools and through our faith community about how important it is to live together. How we can use things like the Peace Initiative to have examples of how we can lead peaceful lives. It is so important for us to know that young people can grow and be successful. We don't have to live in a world of violence. Violence has been reduced in the city of Holyoke over the last few years, but it hasn't been reduced enough. We have to do more, we have to work harder, and we have to talk about to our friends and neighbors about civility, about how we treat each other, about how every day we act, whether we're in our car. We don't need to shake our fist. Usually it's me shaking my fist, by the way. So I don't always practice what I preach, but we don't have to shake our fist at the other drivers. How we treat our neighbors, how we make sure that the music is not too loud to disturb our neighbors, how we don't drag race, how we don't do things that we shouldn't be doing, littering. We have to live in a civil society. And we have to encourage people, particularly young people, to learn about civility and how it is that we should treat each other. And that good old golden rule about how we should treat someone as we would want to be treated is so important. And I hope that we can all learn by that. So I hope today, once again, we can reaffirm our commitment to nonviolence in the city of Holyoke. And I'd like to thank Gladys Lebron Martinez for reaching out as a member of the community and saying, we need a way to get together, we need a dialogue, we need a forum. And with leaders in this community and citizens in this community and young people in this community that are dedicated to nonviolent resolution, we'll make a difference in everyone's lives, and this community will become that nonviolent community that we all look forward to and we all strive for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Él dio un reporte básicamente de las cosas que él quisiera que nosotros empecemos a mirar, que tenemos que trabajar, y le doy gracias al comité que organizó este evento de la parada de San Patricio, pidiéndonos que nosotros tenemos que empezar con nuestros jóvenes a poder llevarle el mensaje que no podemos seguir con la violencia que se está llevando a cabo en la comunidad. Para mí, yo voy a empezar con este mensaje haciéndolo en inglés y voy a regresar en español, si espero que pueda llevar todo traducido, porque estamos, el alcalde se quedó sin traductor y yo también. I just said that the mayor also stayed without his interpreter, so I'm going to try to do my best to do this in Spanish and English as I go explaining. Thank you. I want to thank you, once again I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, and I would also like to thank everyone who has been supporting not only the effort, but the St. Patrick's Parade that we have enjoyed for years. For 26 years I lived in the city, and I've enjoyed it very much. So with this in mind, and the families that were the innocent victims that I don't even know and it doesn't matter, needs to make, the message is that we will not tolerate violence, and this is why I'm here tonight. The reason, like I said, we're here to show solidarity and to demonstrate that our sorrows to the innocent victims and their families for the tragic incident that took place here in the city last Sunday during the St. Patrick Parade. Together in solidarity, we will demonstrate as a community that we will not support violence and we will not tolerate it. Innocent victims are being killed and injured throughout the city. We ask for your mercy and to stop the bloodshed over territory, illegal activities, and supposedly overpower. We would like to ask you to use your strength and energies to do positive things for you and for the city. We ask anyone who may be involved in any affiliation group to know we would like to begin a dialogue to end this war in your own backyard. We will need to end this violence. We are filling the jails every day with younger and younger youth who will never again see the daylight because of the drive-by shooting of illegal activities. Violence is not the way. Communicating is the way. We would like to ask you, and those individuals who have the courage and the power, if you will, to contact me, Gladys LeBron Martinez, and my home number, which is listed, 535-5075. So together we can begin to work for a better tomorrow for you, your siblings, and the rest of the children and residents and non-residents who come to visit this great city. Once again, we want to express our most sincere sorrows to the innocent victims and their families for such a sad tragedy. On behalf of all of us, we want to thank you for coming out to show your solidarity that violence will not be tolerated. And I'm hoping that those who also heard my number to really are seriously about this. We need to work together, and this is a message that I want to clarify. This was not an issue of racial that it went on to be said. I'm quite sure that was not the issue. And this is why I took it upon to come in front of the public to make that clear to all of you who worked so hard to organize this. Number two, I also want to let you know that there's no reason why the people who have been voting on city councils in this community, that people should have been calling up on me, they should have been calling up on you who you have been voted for, and you should have been listening and hearing and working some issues that I should have been addressing. But I want to support any of you who are council members who think that there's the need for us to get involved somehow. And we need to get the message across so that we can work to make a better Holyoke. And once again, I am proud to be a Holyoker, and I've been here for 26 years. So I just did not arrive here. I've been here for 26 years. I have raised 4 children here who all attended the Holyoke system, the Holyoke school system, as well as my granddaughters now at this time. So once again, I want to thank all of you, and from the bottom of my heart, you can see the young population here showing their support and saying no more violence for us. Thank you. Brevemente, quiero dejarles saber a todos ustedes que yo básicamente lo que acabo de decir es que nosotros estamos diciendo que no queremos más violencia y que no queremos una guerra como está continuándose de la misma batalla como de nuestro idioma, que ya está suficiente con la violencia y que queremos dar nuestras condolencias a las víctimas, no lo dieron, pero a las condolencias en el sentido de que fueron heridos en la parada, que inocentemente fueron heridos en medio de esta parada. También quiero dejarles saber que esto no fue un acto racial, que esto no tiene que ver nada con la raza, esto tiene que ver con un evento que se llevó a cabo con víctimas o personas quienes tenían algo contra uno y hicieron este evento. Lamentablemente eso nos ha dado Any city councilor? Anyone from the parade coordination? Nobody wants to come up?
I have not lived in Holyoke for 26 years or as long as you have. I've been here just for about a year and a half. But before I moved to Holyoke, many people told me that one thing that I would learn when I came to the city is that the people here really love their city, they're very, very proud of their city, and they will do anything to keep it the kind of good city they know it is. And it's a very, very good thing that you have done today. Maybe, you know, we'd like to have a lot more people here, but I think the most important thing is we have to realize is that we have to, as you say, we have to be together, we have to work together, we have to understand each other. We have to learn to respect and reverence each other. Whenever we talk about the sacredness of life, that sacredness is something that is from birth until death. And every single one of us who are over here, young people as well as old, we deserve to be honored, we deserve to be respected. And the mayor is right. You can't always make rules and regulations to make people behave themselves. But I would like to think that someday there will be a time and a place where anybody who has any criminal intention will not even dare to go out in the street, not because he fears the police, but because he fears the good people who are there, and knowing that if he or she tries to do something bad, the people will stop it. And that's what you're doing here today. You're trying to stop it. Congratulations. Keep up the good work, and God bless you all.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Básicamente dice que, ok, él no había vivido aquí 26 años, pero lleva un año y medio aquí, y una de las cosas que él aprendió cuando venía a vivir aquí a Holyoke, que la gente, sinceramente, están a favor y que, como se dice, apoyan vivir aquí en este pueblo y que aprecian este pueblo. Y él le dice a nosotros que por uno de los sacramentos que nos pide es que nosotros, el sacramento que nos pide es que nosotros vengamos juntos cuando hay momentos así difíciles para que podamos tener un sitio donde todas las personas puedan venir a hablar con nosotros cuando tienen que hablar. Queremos darle gracias al padre que está aquí presente. Vamos a darle un gran aplauso por su esfuerzo de venir a frente. Gracias.
Soy Padre Jaime de la Inmaculada en los Flats. Llevo solamente 7 meses aquí en Holyoke, México. No conozco la situación bien, pero llevaba 27 años en Hartford, 18 en la calle Park. Yo he pregado allá con 6 o 7 generaciones de gangas allá, un montón de tiroteos. Yo no sé qué pasa aquí, pero yo sé en Hartford un problema, que algo sucede como eso, todo el mundo está bien agitado, hechos 2 o 3 presos y más nada. Unos meses, un año después, la misma cosa. Yo he experimentado por 27 años en algo. Gente que después, si ellos en la cárcel, pues, van a salir. Porque gente recibe una vida. Tenemos que bregar con eso, tenemos que pensar de eso. Hay que comunicarse con los muchachos de la calle. No hay comunicación con ellos, entonces, nada para cambiar. Nada para cambiar. I've only been here, I've never heard from the back of the flat, I've only been here for 7 months. I don't know too much about what happens here in Holyoke, but I spent 27 years in Hartford, 18 on Park Street. I've gone through about 6 or 7 generations of gangs down there. I get to very people, situations like what happened here. Plus visit too many people that were wounded, drive-bys and shootouts. Plus visit half the time people responsible. I know in Hartford, very often things like this happen. Everybody gets excited, they throw 2 people in jail, and then it's business as usual until something else happens. Then they say, oh, how did that happen? And or after they have the idea they can throw everybody in jail, sooner or later people are going to get out. Whatever you've done, the rest of the done is making, working together, there should be consistency. Talk to the guys and the kids on the street. If not, you're just going to continue as usual.
taking place, a peace initiative that the mayor has